full account of the life and vocation of Saint Vincent de Paul, priest, and the effect of his movement. This reflection is prepared by Father Ayub Francis, pastor at St. Jude Church, Grand Rapids, Michigan, USA. Early life and education. Saint Vincent de Paul was born on April 24, 1581, in the village of Pouilly, France, to a poor farming family. Despite their humble means, his parents recognized Vincent's intellectual gifts and sent him to study with the Franciscans. He excelled in his studies and was ordained a priest in 1600 at the age of 19, with the hope of securing a prestigious ecclesiastical position to provide for his family. Initially, his priesthood was motivated by personal ambition, as he sought financial security. However, his early years as a priest marked a profound transformation, leading him to dedicate his life to serving the poor, oppressed, and marginalized. Captivity and conversion of heart. While traveling from Marseille to Narbonne in 1605, Vincent was captured by Turkish pirates and sold into slavery in North Africa. During his 2 years in captivity, Vincent worked as a slave for several masters. His final master was a former Christian turned Muslim, who eventually returned to the Christian faith due to Vincent's influence. Vincent's escape and return to France in 1607 marked a pivotal moment in his life. This traumatic experience instilled in him a deep empathy for the suffering of others. He began to see his vocation as a call to service, particularly for the poor and oppressed. Early ministry and formation of charitable works. Upon returning to France, Vincent entered into the service of Queen Marguerite de Valois, and later worked as a chaplain to the Gondi family, one of the wealthiest noble families in France. This new position introduced him to the vast disparities between the wealthy and the poor. Moved by the spiritual and material poverty of the rural peasants, Vincent devoted himself to organizing missions to evangelize and care for the poor. In 1617, Vincent experienced a life-changing moment when he heard the confession of a dying peasant. The encounter revealed the spiritual neglect and suffering of the rural poor, sparking his desire to create a system of care for both their spiritual and material needs. He soon began preaching missions to peasants and organizing parish-based initiatives to provide food, clothing, and medicine. In the same year, he founded the Confraternity of Charity in Tillon-les-Dombes, the first of many charitable organizations aimed at assisting the poor. This confraternity was the seed of what would later become a global movement. Founding of the Congregation of the Mission Vincentians. In 1625, Vincent founded the Congregation of the Mission, also known as the Vincentians or Lazarists, a society of priests and brothers committed to preaching missions in rural areas and providing education and support for the clergy. The Vincentians' primary aim was to assist in the spiritual and material care of the poor and neglected, particularly those living in rural France. They also emphasized the formation of priests to serve these communities. Vincent's mission work was not limited to France. Under his leadership, the Vincentians expanded their outreach to other countries, including Poland, Italy, and North Africa, where they focused on the conversion of non-Christians and the care of enslaved Christians. Founding of the Daughters of Charity in 1633. Together with Saint Louise de Marillac, Vincent founded the Daughters of Charity Filles de la Charite, a community of women dedicated to serving the poor. Unlike traditional religious orders, the Daughters of Charity were not cloistered. They lived among the people, providing direct aid to the poor, sick, and marginalized. This model of active service outside the convent was revolutionary at the time and allowed the Daughters of Charity to have a profound impact on French society. The Daughters of Charity served in hospitals, orphanages, prisons, and on the battlefields during the 30 Years' War. Their work eventually spread beyond France, becoming one of the most influential women's religious communities in the world. Work for prisoners, slaves, and victims of war. Saint Vincent de Paul's compassion extended to all those who suffered, regardless of their background. He was deeply involved in prison reform, often visiting the incarcerated and advocating for better treatment of prisoners. He worked to ransom Christian slaves in North Africa and actively sought out financial and spiritual support for their cause. During the wars that ravaged France, particularly the 30 Years' War, Vincent organized relief efforts to provide food, shelter, and medical care to the victims of the conflict. His work was supported by many benefactors, including royalty and nobility. Effect of the Vincentian movement. Saint Vincent's work and the Vincentian movement had an immense and long-lasting effect on both the church and society. 1. Systematization of charity. Before Vincent, charitable work was often sporadic and unorganized. His vision and leadership established a systematic approach to charity, forming organizations that provided consistent care for the poor. This model of structured, sustained charity has since become a cornerstone of modern social work and religious service. 2. Clerical reform. Through the Congregation of the Mission, Vincent de Paul played a key role in reforming the clergy in France. He established seminaries for the education and formation of priests, emphasizing the importance of holiness, pastoral care, and service to the poor. His work greatly influenced the renewal of the French clergy during a time of widespread laxity and corruption. 3. Advancement of women in active ministry. The Daughters of Charity, under the leadership of Vincent and Louise de Marillac, represented a breakthrough in religious life for women. By allowing women to serve outside the convent and engage directly in active ministry, Vincent's vision paved the way for many other women's congregations involved in social work, healthcare, and education. 4. Global outreach. Vincent's initiatives extended far beyond France. The Vincentians and Daughters of Charity became global forces in providing charitable works and education. Their influence can be seen today in countless hospitals, schools, and orphanages around the world. 5. Ransom of slaves. Vincent's concern for enslaved Christians led to the establishment of funds and efforts to ransom Christian slaves from Muslim-held territories, which was a significant concern in the 17th century. His advocacy for the dignity of all people, including prisoners and slaves, was ahead of its time. 6. Influence on modern charity. The model of care for the poor and the marginalized that Vincent pioneered continues to influence charitable organizations today. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul, founded by Blessed Frederick Ozanam in 1833, follows in his footsteps, with lay members around the world committed to serving the poor in the Vincentian spirit of humility and charity. Death and canonization. St. Vincent de Paul died on September 27, 1660, at the age of 79 in Paris. His death was mourned by all of France, as his work had transformed the lives of countless people, from peasants to prisoners. He was canonized by Pope Clement XII in 1737, and his feast day is celebrated on September 27th. Legacy and lessons from his life. The legacy of Saint Vincent de Paul is one of radical, practical charity, deeply rooted in faith. He lived out the Gospel's call to serve the least of these, and his life offers timeless lessons. 1. Serving the poor is serving Christ. Vincent saw Christ in the face of every poor person he served. His life teaches that true charity is grounded in the recognition of the inherent dignity of every person. 2. Humility and perseverance. Despite his humble beginnings, Vincent's perseverance and humility allowed him to accomplish great things for the church and the poor. He reminds us that humility is the foundation of effective service. 3. Collaboration and community. Vincent emphasized the importance of working together with others for a common goal. His collaboration with Louise de Marillac and others shows that charity is most effective when undertaken in community. Reflection for meditation. The life of Saint Vincent de Paul calls us to reflect on how we can serve the poor in our own lives, whether through direct acts of charity or advocacy for systemic change. Vincent's example challenges us to make a difference in the lives of those who suffer. Question for meditation: how can I, following the example of Saint Vincent de Paul, serve the poor and marginalized in my own community with compassion, humility, and perseverance? Saint Vincent de Paul's legacy continues through the many organizations and movements that bear his name and continue his mission of service to the poor and forgotten.